My name is James P. Johnston. I'm an attorney practicing law in Wichita, Kansas. Today's date is November 2nd, 1996. I have with me today Mr. Robert G. Vinson, my client, who is here at my request to give us a statement concerning the events of November 22nd, 1963, both prior to that date, on that date, and subsequent to that date. Mr. Vinson, would you please, first of all, give us your full name?
My name is Robert Greal Vinson.
Mr. Vinson, first of all, what has been your occupation during most of your life?
I was in the Air Force for 20 years, starting in 1946.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and just informally state what your career in the military, not just commencing with the Army, entailed in a chronological way?
Well, I first entered the Army in 1946 and served with them until 1947, November 1947. Then I entered the Air Force in March of 1948, March 17th, and I continued with them until September the 30th, 1966, where I retired from the Army.
Now, in your military career, Mr. Vinson, have you received any particular awards which might be considered important from the standpoint of your military duty and ability?
Yes, I received the Air Force Commendation Medal and the Joint Army and Air Force Commendation Medal, which is a very highly recognized medal in the armed services.
All right. Now, Mr. Vinson, of course, you received an honorable discharge from the service, is that correct?
Yes.
And that would have been from the Air Force?
From the Air Force.
Now, Mr. Vinson, directing your attention to the events of November 22nd, 1963, which, as you know, is the day that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, would you, first of all, tell us where you were stationed in the relevant time frame before November 22nd, 1963?
I was assigned to North American Air Defense Command in Colorado Springs. This was beginning of latter part of 1962 until 1965.
And was there a base there at which you were stationed?
Yes, I was stationed at Ant Air Force Base.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and tell us then, commencing at that point, about an experience which took place on November 22nd, 1963, but of course commenced prior to that date to lead up to November 22nd, 1963.
Well, prior to that, there had been some promotions made there on the base, and I kind of felt that I was entitled to one of them, and I didn't receive it. So then I requested a leave, and I went back to Washington, D.C., where it was on the 19th.
The 19th of November of 1963? Is that correct?
On a Wednesday. Mm-hmm.
All right. And the purpose of that was to accomplish what?
Was to bring my personnel records before the Pentagon staff that was over the Armed Force, or Air Force at that time, to show them that I had commendation medals, outstanding evaluations, and so forth, and to find out why I didn't receive one of those promotions at that time.
Tell us about then the experience of going to Washington, D.C. on November 19, 1963.
I left on a Wednesday afternoon and arrived in Washington, D.C. that afternoon about 4:30. The next morning, Thursday morning, I got up and went over to the Capitol to see the congressman from my area. And he referred me to a Colonel Chapman which was my understanding. He was the liaison officer between the Congress and the Pentagon. And I was sitting by his desk, and he called the Pentagon and made arrangements for me to go over and talk to them. While I was in Colonel Chapman's office, at the time it didn't mean too much to me, but he received a telephone call. And I only heard his side of the conversation. I couldn't hear who the other people on the other line, on the other end of the line. He told this party he was talking to, he said, he said, we have information, and I highly recommend that the president do not go to Dallas. And he says, of course, the advance party from the Congress here has already departed, but I still highly recommend that the president do not go to Dallas. Well, I just passed it off at that time, and he told me where to go catch the limousine to go to the Pentagon. I went into the personnel office over there, and first I saw a master sergeant, and he looked over my records, and he said, well, I'd like for you to wait a minute and have a seat over there. Then I saw him go into the office of a colonel. I didn't get the colonel's name, but he went in there, and he was in there for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. And he came back out, and he told me, he said, he would like to see you. Speaking of the colonel. And I went in, and he'd had my file there, and he started looking through it, and he says, are all of these like this through your career? And I said, yes, it is. He said, okay, we'll look into this, and we thank you for bringing it to our attention. So then I got up and went back outside. And about 15 minutes later, the sergeant came out and gave me my folder, which I had took with me, and told me that they would be in touch. The next morning, I got up about 6:30, 7, caught the bus. It takes you out there. I arrived at the base Andrews Air Force Base about around 7:30.
And this would then be what date?
This would be Friday, November the 22nd.
All right, of 1963.
1963. I walked into the terminal, and there was a long counter on the right-hand side, and I walked over to the airman there, and I asked him if he had any flights going to Lowry or Colorado Springs, either one. He said, no, we don't have any flights leaving here today. None booked out.
All right, let me ask you a question at this point. Had you made any previous arrangements to catch a flight back, or why did you just go to Andrews Air Force Base on an impromptu basis, more or less?
Yeah, Air Force would have these flights to shuttle correspondents, personnel, dignitary personnel, and all to have flights going to these bases, since it was the command center for the North American Air Defense Command.
All right. Well, you as an enlisted person went then to Andrews without any prior reservation or arrangement, because it was customary for Air Force personnel to do that, to travel around the country.
Oh, yes.
Okay.